watching the Policy Times, India's only media perhaps, which is promoting developmental journalism at a time when countries across the world needs a real direction, a positive direction for strategic development. Now we call it national reincarnation. The context is that the COVID-19 crisis has, while has made the world at standstill, it has also divided the world into two periods of the history. One is pre-COVID and post-COVID. So it's just not about another health pandemic. It is actually going to rewrite the history that is going to come. Now, in that context, infrastructure industry for any nation, whether it is developed, emerging, or a poor economy, infrastructure plays a very crucial role for the development of the nation. Now, that is whether it is the road infrastructure, whether it is digital infrastructure, which is going to come now, or it is the private big complex shopping infrastructure, or the other important aspect is the MSMEs. So I'm really happy that we have two personalities, two experts, two luminaries who club actually both sectors. The other important sector for any nation, whether again rich, poor, or mediocre economies, is the role of MSMEs. In whichever country is the hotbed for MSMEs, the country is actually the real uh, country in the world in terms of and why I'm saying so, because MSMEs or startups or the middle level businesses are backbone for any economy. They create massive amount of employment, they create massive amount of revenue. So the success stories are Germany, even Vietnam is becoming a good success story in this case. Even China has done tremendously well in terms of boosting its MSMEs. But a lot of success stories in the European front. India, again, is one of the top destinations for startups of the world and has a large amount of MSMEs in the country. So I want to introduce two real experts on this panel today. Our chairman of the show is Dr. P. Shekhar, who is chairman of Global Smart Cities panel, and a person, a leader who is leading this Unleashing India Web Summit series. And two eminent experts I want to introduce, Mr. K.K. Kapila, who is a global infrastructure expert, chairman of International Roads Federation, Geneva, and also CMD of ICT. Sir, thank you so much for dedicating and giving us time and talking to us. Sir. It's such wonderful to have you. Dr. Mahesh Reddy, sir, is there as our expert. He is a Director General of Infrastructure Industry and Logistics Federation of India, and at the same time he is also part of the Confederation of Indian Small and Medium Enterprises. So we will be talking at length on a lot of issues related to infrastructure development of the country. And I want to, with this, I want to hand over the show to Dr. P. Shekhar to kindly take the session forward.
Thank you, Akram. We have gone through last 3 months this particular exercise of understanding first what is it that COVID has done. How, when we say post-COVID, means we are talking of post-COVID, post-March, not post-COVID thinking something like COVID is going to end. So things are, of a different grade. COVID is a World War III attack without any money, without anybody putting any gun or anything like that. It has brought an economy to the knees. But we as Indians have to grow. We as Indians will grow. And there are experts like the two experts who are sitting in front of us. They all drive this economy into a different league. Now, today, the whole concentration will be on infrastructure. Infrastructure is what? The nature has given us land and water. It is the infrastructure industry which is making the civilization whatever it is today. If I don't build a wall, if I don't build a road, if I don't build the all electrical, so many. When I say infrastructure means I will run through a very short presentation. Infrastructure is everything which is brought us to whatever we are today. And we have with us two eminent experts. So K. Kapila. Kapila is a doyen of the Indian, he's a Bhishma Pitama for Indian infrastructure industry. He is there for, I do not know, more than 4 decades trying to guide. He has seen us from nowhere to whatever we are today. Today we are almost number one in roads. Thanks to him. He's somebody who has been instrumental in almost 5.3 million kilometers of road which has come to India. May not be directly by inch, but he has guided people. He is also, that's why the World Road Federation has made him the chairman. He wants to leave, but they don't want him to leave because they want his advice in all parts of the world. He has his own company, has got offices in 32 countries. He is the leading soft exporter of various skills for infrastructure industry. He guides. Even government of India has any problem, means he is there standing next to them to see, independent of the ministry, in terms of what they should do, how they should do, why they should do. In today's issue, I will introduce both of the panelists together, but later I'll request Mr. Kapila to talk. My Dr. Mahesh Reddy, he has got multiple hats. He's an association man. He's a facilitator of a different grade. He has been in so many associations. He has, every association wants him. Okay. Now he has got two hats now, two very important hats. One is Infrastructure and Logistic Association, and second, of course, is Confederation of Small and Medium Industries. So I would expect him to come once more as a small industries on an event which will be more further. Today we will concentrate on his thoughts on how an association can play a role, what it is doing, how it is doing. So today, when I request Mr. Kapila, I would like Mr. Kapila first, of course, let me run through this presentation. This is only a 2 minute I will take to run. Yeah. So this is for infrastructure industry, strategic way forward, because infrastructure can be grossly misunderstood, misleading. So I would like to put things in proper perspective. This is a slide in which in most of the other presentation I may like to almost skip it. But today I will spend a few seconds on this. Now, India as a country is, we know about population, which keeps on getting repeated. We are again 206 countries put together. This is something which is new to people, but this is, but the whole development of India is around 0.45 of the land area, because whole infrastructure has to be in a very tiny portion of India in terms of core. Whereas, why it is very important is the road is the one which is connecting the whole India. That means even the balance portion has to be connected. Even if you go by a train or plane, you'll find after the city there's nothing for kilometers and kilometers, nothing, and again one more small place will come again. So the connectivity has to be good, and connectivity has to be very nice. Of course, with respect to media, we always hear about bad road, potholes, and so on and so forth, which is again true, but we are not nowhere as bad as we should be. In terms of road length, we are almost 505 million square kilometers. We are almost number one in the whole world. So these are all interconnected, and there's a huge area and there's a huge development to be done. Along with this, we also have 1,300 islands which are being developed based on our own initiative. Government has set up a committee to form 1,300 islands into smart cities, which means again there'll be huge infrastructure to be done. So now these are all, in terms of global and Indian roadmap for the world. I would not definitely go into each of the slides. I'll go through one or two slides. This is slightly a slide in which the important slide in which we have to go through. This is the COVID, which has really brought down the economy. But the truth is, COVID is just an imagination, because in terms of numbers, it is too low. Yes, in terms of the psychological hit which it has done, it has really succeeded. But in terms of real numbers, today maximum in a day of deaths is 1,000. But number of deaths in a normal day is 27,000. So it doesn't come to even 3% of the death. This is the maximum. Average in the whole 5 months put together is not even 0.5%. So, but when some damage has been done, it has to be rectified. This I'm showing and explaining this only because people have such a draconian view of COVID that people do not know that, every day the media says today it is 50,000, today it is 52,000, today it is 50,001, today is the highest in the world. And, creating too much of imbalance in the mind of a common person. We should know that we are very, 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 very safe. All these things are there, but Even if it comes to whatever way people are trying to prove, there are people like the experts who are sitting. They will make India and the globe come back into a real action. So I will not go too deep into COVID, and there is a huge investment needed for infrastructure, which is in a way there, and in a way much more is required. And when we say infrastructure, means it is not only roads, power, telecommunication, all critical infrastructure, whether it's banks or whether it is, right from education system, everything needs connectivity. Then there are amounts needed by the world and by India. They're all in trillions and trillions of dollars, and which are available, which are not available, which are all available. There are investors who are literally speaking standing in queue to invest in India, but Indian conditions again need to change, which also I'm sure our experts will talk. That some needs in the government's thinking, government's way of welcoming, government's way of analyzing, they all will be required for the right way to expand them. Now, roadways is doing well, but lot more to be done and a lot more improvements to be done, which again is something which I'm sure our experts will talk. Railways, we may not talk today, unless they decide to talk. Power is other. As I said, since I don't want to take too much time, aircraft, airports, because these are all huge, but in today's COVID environment, there is nothing going on in this. This totally dropped down. Metro rail is again today not working. They will be the first one to restart, and then airports will start. But with all this thing, we need investment. Investments are there waiting, and I'm sure thing. While doing all this thing, under few seconds, I'll send on the secured governance. This secured governance, I think both the experts know, it is our concept for seamless development of economy. In this concept, you are saying how the money can come and how the money can go into infrastructure. Infrastructure has a huge value addition. That means huge valuation goes up. That valuation which is going up can fund the infrastructure is what, in one sentence, if I had to describe secure governance, it is a lot deeper than what I'm saying. But by this, the return of the money is guaranteed to the person who is giving. That means person who is giving, if he is giving for the road, actually he'll be giving the money for something which the road defines for value addition. So if he gives the money into two hubs around the road, the hub value will keep on going up and the road becomes free. So the money is well spent, the return is guaranteed, and it is 100%. There's no question of failure coming in picture because various sectors of the economic come into picture. That's why we say this has got the question of various hubs, mini hubs, nano hubs, and minimal government investments, convergence of multiple sectors, and harnessing untapped potential for national growth is what is the basic definition of secured governance, which today some of the largest projects in India are going through this particular concept. And I'm sure many more will go and make our economy very sound. So with that, these are our two esteemed speakers. Yes. Now, with this, I will request Kapilaji. As I introduce, he is one of the doyen of the Indian infrastructure industry. And I would request him for first at least 2 minutes to talk about himself, his journey to his growth, and then about the infrastructure. And in the second half, of course, we will talk about post-COVID, how we are going to bring the economy back into its required position. Kapilaji.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shekhar, for giving me this opportunity to be with you all. The I would rather concentrate on the subject than talk about myself. Maybe on my closing, I'll say a few words on that in that aspect. Quality infrastructure is an essential requirement for development around the world, and so is it. So it is in India. COVID-19 has taught us that we need to become self-reliant. That is the biggest message that COVID has given us, not only to us, but to the world at large. We have been over dependent on certain countries because of cheap labor, and we try to pass on just for that everything to them to create and send back. Now, this is something where we had gone utterly wrong. The entire world has gone utterly wrong. And as a correction, Government of India has launched the Atam Nirbhar Bharat, which is today an inescapable necessity, not only for us, but for the world at large. How do you build Atam Nirbhar Bharat? That's the other important aspect which we need to consider. Whether it is power sector, it is roads, it is rail, to become self-reliant in infrastructure, to be able to feed the factories, the other units which we are trying to develop, which we had stopped working on, we need connectivity. And that connectivity is an inescapable necessity and needs to be fast-tracked. Now, going there, the government has come out with a direction under MSME that we will not invite global tenders up to 200 crores. That means for works up to 200 crores, only Indian companies are eligible. Now, what constitutes an Indian company? Today, the rules are that any company established in India under the Companies Act, which pays taxes on its income in India, is an Indian company. It may be 100% owned subsidiary of a Chinese company or any other European company for that matter. It is still an Indian company. So is the work done by such a company benefiting the Indian nation? Does it serve the intent of Atam Nirbhar Bharat, or we are still dependent on the world at large? That's a question which I would like to pose here. And since we have Mr. Mahesh Reddy, who does the federation work for the MSMEs, this is something which you need to take as a matter of great concern, that if you want Atam Nirbhar Bharat, it cannot be developed in an area where the basic definition is wrong. It must have at least 51% Indian national ownership if it has to be an Indian company. 100% owned subsidiary of Chinese company or European conglomerate, or for that matter, for anywhere else in the world, cannot be treated as an Indian company. And if he can't be 100% dependent on them, can you leave your defense to them? Our intent is to become self-sufficient even in defense. And so many items of the defense procurement have been projected to be put under that clause that they should be all done through India. Now, Indian companies. Now, are all these foreign companies going to do that as Indian companies and take away the profits by paying the taxes in India? Will we achieve Atam Nirbhar Bharat like that? No. So there is a need to rethink. There is a need to dwell as to what do we want to achieve and how do we propose to achieve. We certainly want to achieve the strengths. We want to re-strengthen the country. We want to strengthen the economy. We want to strengthen our people. But we need policy corrections post haste. As Dr. Shekhar said, money is available. Outside the world, people are wanting to invest in India, but have we provided the right conditions for them to work in India? Have we provided the right conditions for them to take back the money? Is there enough? Have we provided enough proper dispensation in our PPP managed arrangements? No, we haven't done that. And if we don't do that, how do you expect people to come and invest with you? We have to really go deep into this and make policy corrections post haste, irrespective of the area where we are looking at. We have an excellent leader who is leading us today for both MSMEs and highway sector. He has excellent ideas, but how about their implementation? The people down the line do not follow the leader in the actual spirit. You see, in the past, when we were coming towards the end of the last 5-year plan, 5 years of the government, a year before that, a lot of projects were launched for detailed engineering. And these were for possible uh, roads of state highways to be converted to the national highways. But they never moved forward. So for number of years, the people have been blocked. They were given the orders. And the industry has been in that pains because those DPRs never got completed and the people were never paid. And although the minister made a statement that all DPRs will be prepared, irrespective of when we take up the work, it has not happened. When we tell the bureaucracy that this is the minister's directive, the answer is we have to look at the viability. Now, there is a difference between looking at viability of each project that you should see if you have to do the implementation as to how to make a project viable. But what you have to see today is that the industry, which is most of it, which is less than MSMEs, the turnovers which have been listed, they are all suffering because we have not provided them. So we need to really look at the corrective actions which are needed. I would appeal that you don't have money to give today. The government has very small resources, but at least you must pay back the income tax refunds to the companies which are under MSME. If the government owes them money under the tax TDS route where they have taken it from them and it is now due to them, which has been processed, please refund them. That way you will help the MSMEs. If you even take it that you would like to immediately do a favor by refunding them the money, their own money. Don't give them any, we are not asking for any additional money to be given. No dopes, we are not interested in any. But we certainly are interested that our own money must be returned to the MSMEs, which the government owes them. There's no reason not to do that. Then if you want MSMEs to really progress, provide them some money to improve their ITs, to buy the necessary hardware and software, buy some instrumentation which they need to progress with, at say 6% interest. Some funding to that effect is necessary to promote the MSMEs, who really are doing an excellent job. They are in fact contributing immensely, as you have rightly said, that they are the biggest employers. So these factors need to be urgently addressed. So let's make corrections in the PPPs, how to make the money come into the country to do the infrastructure, because we really don't have the funds to do that infrastructure projects. There is a very ambitious program of doing them. But unless we make the necessary corrections there. Another correction which is essentially needed is under the GST. The GST is collected from the concessionaires, the contractors, and the client consultants without paying them. The moment you raise a bill, after 30 days, you must pay the GST, irrespective of the fact whether you receive the payment or not. How do you expect people to pay you? This is a tax without making payment. And if you don't pay, you are required to pay interest on that money. So on one side you don't pay, on other side you charge interest just because he has raised a bill. Well, these are inconceivable things. It has been brought to the notice of the government several times. Mr. Nitin Gadkari wrote to Mr. Ashok, the earlier Arun Saab, the earlier finance minister, and the response was that this group constitutes only 1.43% people. Now, is it to be determined by how many people are there in a particular category, or on the basis of the fundamentals? So relief cannot be given because this is a very small category. This is the high time that we start looking at policy corrections. Do them post haste, and then only infrastructure can be developed and our aspirations can be achieved. What we aspire to get will be able to get there without any difficulty. There is enough knowledge, there is enough potential, there is enough warmth and heat, there is enough desire in Indians to do well. Just support them by right policy directives and decisions. And we will make India shine. We are determined to do it. Give us the assistance by making policy corrections.
Very true.
These are some thoughts I thought I'll express initially.
Now, let me. Hello.
Hello, yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah, Dr. Mahesh.
Yeah, I'm back. In fact, in between,
No,
I thought.
no. The main thing from Mr. Kapila is to come in the second half. Now, from your point of view, again, my request is little about yourself and more about your own industry, if it is.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Was I disconnected, or the entire connection was
No,
lost?
only you were disconnected. Only you were disconnected. But just for 1 minute it was. 1 minute.
I see. So, well, are we done with the Dr. Kapila? In fact, he was speaking while I was.
No, if you want me to talk about myself, I'll do that later. But let's hear Mohan.
No, Dr. Shekhar, I didn't get to you. In fact,
after you talk, then again you come back.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Oh, fantastic. Since the connection was lost, I was clueless. That's what I was trying to. No, wonderful. Dr. Kapila, we all thought you are more an expert in the area of infrastructure with a more focus on highways, etc. The bids up to 200 crore for MSMEs, rather particularly for SME sector, unless it is reserved for Indian origin or Indian-based companies, the very objective is lost. Yes. And on this particular aspect, several representations have also come up, which we had taken up with the Honorable Minister, with the Ministry of MSMEs. And in fact, the committee of secretaries, COS, is actively considering. And but then how to go about, because these nuances will have to be really looked at from the policy aspects, and also it has a certain other interlinkages with various other elements which are attached with the, not only in the finance ministry, but also in the overall, company affairs and so on and so forth. But certainly, yes, unless the policy instrument doesn't convey and rather encapture the intent of the government in its very actions, that very policy doesn't serve the purpose. So it is very much under consideration. And the another important point, Dr. Kapila, that you had mentioned, that MSMEs being the kind of real backbone, real nerve of the economy as such, how are we going to address? What are the kind of various measures that the country and particularly the government, as its a facilitator through its various policy instrument, what all we have been doing? Just in few of the points I would encapsulate. Just having just with a quick response on what you mentioned, Dr. Shekhar. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us on this program, both Mr. Huck and Dr. Shekhar. And the kind of series that you had devised is immense use, particularly not only during this COVID phase, and your very topic post-COVID impact on us, on various industries, including that of MSMEs, and in today's context, SME, rather infrastructure centric industry is the theme that you had devised. So, in fact, along with the infrastructure focus, you're also really looking at the sectors, all the 8 core sectors which are today getting impacted across the country. In fact, of course, in our discussion, we have also touched upon MSME, because ultimately the supply side of the base is garnering from this MSME base as well. And that's where our linkage or our topic of discussion also we were kind of touching upon. But the excellent presentation that you had made, touching upon not only the physical infrastructure, but the core infrastructure, social infrastructure, the IT infrastructure, communications and digital infrastructure, etc. The kind of figures that you had come out are quite scintillating, and definitely for the policy advocates and the policy practitioners, the presentation as well as today's event, I'm sure will definitely provide wonderful inputs. Just a few points on the overall infrastructure as well as the infrastructure centric industry. Today, what is really bothering is the both the infrastructure centric industry. Now that since we are willy-nilly touching upon MSME base as well, including the MSME, is what is the survival method? How are we going to sustain during this very COVID period? Of course, as Dr. Shekhar rightly mentioned, the COVID period, the whatever is the human life, securing the human life, are the kind of situation on the life pyramid metrics per se may not be of that magnitude, but rightly, of course, because one is really concerned about its exponential, aspects. So that is where the preparedness and pre-preparedness of not only the governmental system, the entire the community is really focused on. That is how the kind of alarming bells across the sectors, across the not only the healthcare, but entire focus of whether the center, states, or the community, everything is centered on that. Obviously, during these situations, it is but natural the communities respond that way. You are also absolutely right. In that very same, leg, what also it had hit the economy is most unfortunately very bad. It had very badly hit, far beyond its dimension. And the MSMEs is one of the worst hit. I mean, undoubtedly, not only that on this platform here. So it is the reality of the day, and particularly this segment, which is the backbone of the economy, bedrock of the economy, has completely got stifled.
through various policy measures, whether it is through from the, I mean, rather finance ministry's announcements or the MSME ministry's announcements or various state governments measures, etc. Most unfortunately, they have not really kind of touched the kind of damage that has that the MSMEs have seen. Nowhere it has kind of touching upon in terms of the the damage that it has undergone or the suffering that the suffering that the kind of it has the dimension it has suffered vis-a-vis the what is the kind of rescue as well as what we call support systems which are put in place. But the damage is in fact the multi-dimensional and collateral in the sense Dr. Kapila has already mentioned. It not only today's impact on these sectors from today's market situation or the consumption based situation or the production situation or the supply chain situation. The damage is, I mean, across the board. And that is where whatever is the kind of, the mortgage, the financial instruments or the financial institutions, whatever they have announced in terms of the moratorium, etc., they have not really served many of these purposes. In the sense, the very base of the labor got disturbed. The very base of the confidence of the consumer that got completely kind of wiped out today. And that consumer, when I am referring to for an MSME, the consumer is a large unit. For an MSME, an intermediary supplier is yet a micro unit. So here at the middle part of this chain, in this link, both the bottom part of the chain as well as the upper part of the chain, both got affected, and its own internal belly, operational part, called the labor, called the capital, called the operative systems, whatever. Most, I mean, see, take it, name it, term it, this entire, the holistic situation itself got perturbed. So that is when we are referring to the word, the MSMEs today are passing through the phase. This is what it comes from the heart of an MSME player. And the situation, the COVID is an overarching kind of impact. But whatever it was, in fact, most unfortunately simmering in the past, it took or it assumed on multiplier exponential effect. That is what today we are noticing as a kind of outcome or the result of MSMEs. Why I am specifically elaborating on this aspect is, for most of these industry aspects, supply part of the industry aspect, whether in the communications industry, the digital space, or the manufacture, even the bitumen manufacturers, or even any of these, without, see, the labor impact is a fact. The supplier base is a fact. There are no road construction. I mean, most of these construction activity in the building sector, R&P, PWD works are at stall. And of course, the impact may be, rather reason may be one component of the overall work progression. But then the entire supply base of the infrastructure-centric industry is at a, I mean, rather most harnessing situation. Today, the fact that coal production, the fact that the steel production, and most of these industry productions in the last quarter, the quarter ending with the March, have seen 24%, 24 or 25%, I mean, reduction, and another one 14% reduction, are the kind of impacts one is really seeing from sector after sector. And these are some examples. But then, if we really kind of extrapolate and see what is going in the overall infrastructure, which I will come to now, is humongous. Dr. Kapila would know much better, I'm sure. I mean, being a kind of operator on the ground, while we are more dealing with the policy instruments, and then the industry interface with the government and the other policy, operators. Our perspective, maybe, I mean, which need to be extrapolated. But then the reality today is, look at any of these infrastructure, whether the housing or the highways is etc., with a major push with Gadkari ji and the team today. In fact, other day we were discussing few things with Mr. Sandhu, NHEI and few others, and the kind of confidence that they are pushing is fantastic. The kind of institutional mechanism that they are driving in terms of to build, to sustain the confidence among both the contractor or the BOT operators or whatever the communities, the fantastic job the policy, the executive is performing. But that is not really sufficient, because what has impacted is the important aspect. What needs to be in the post-COVID situation, what needs to be really looked at is the today's topic again, the whether infrastructure or the industry. More importantly, infrastructure centric, infrastructure base or supply side of the infrastructure industry. What it needs to kind of seriously looked at is the shift from the physical interface to digital interface. That is what COVID has really taught us. The pandemic situation has taught us. Otherwise also, which was supposed to be part of our overall progression, this has given a kind of little assertion or exertive push. Because most of this infrastructure or otherwise the operational part of the industry or the services, the entire base, economic base, which was operating from the physical operations to a shift definitely towards digital interface. The second aspect, I'm sure Dr. Kapila and Dr. Shekhar must have already interfaced. In fact, you had also captured a few points in the presentation. The financial structuring and a relief package, irrespective of, in addition to the kind of packages and the systems and methods being devised, what is far more important is to kind of devise a relief-centric programs, packages for the entire infrastructure and industry base. Today, if we are really talking about even the commercial spaces, today, even if you are offering at 75% of the commercial space, there are no takers. At the same time, services have to be run. In fact, even airline, it has to operate. Whether the consumer base, consumer side, whether it is 183 passengers or 170 passengers, 100 passengers or 80 passengers, flight has to take off. Airport operator has to kind of operate the airport, irrespective of the numbers or the passengers, the base, that whatever is the numbers going to be. And the same story holds good whether it is the entire service community among the transportation or the urban other utilities, etc. So if that be so, the package or the method or the structures devised, whether it is PPP or otherwise, how are they going to be operated? So I think at least post-COVID, a couple of years, the situation, the policy instruments and the guidance and the advisory needs to be a bit different, which I'm very happy, I'm delighted to share with on this platform that Honorable Minister Gadkari ji and his team are on the same page, and is also been taking up various ministries concerned, whether it is the finance ministry or the other ministries which are connected with these activities, that we need to kind of handhold the entire industry infrastructure space to kind of bail out from this situation. I mean, it doesn't not necessarily a kind of what is devised and left it to, but then how do you kind of handhold and take the infrastructure and the industry players along with you to kind of overcome the pandemic situation? The third component I was really looking at is, so far, the shortage driven paradigm we were kind of catering to. Say, for example, you needed something, then you come out with the idea of creation, and then whatever the operational modus operandi be in terms of whether it is mostly these services are the public goods, and then whether it's the state driven or the concessionaire driven. So you were coming out mostly with the shortage or the demand driven situation we were so far. But now that demand, the consumer part is disturbed. So now what needs to be done? It also in fact relates to the same point as what I just mentioned. Now it has to be kind of the consumer centric or the surplus driven model that we need to really look at. Because this entire thing is, see, once you have the enough passengers or the enough traffic, or even for a toll, enough traffic when you have, the situation is different. All assumptions and your entire model will be intact. Now today, the reverse would be the situation for some time. That is the reason why, even in fact, other day we were talking to some of these, what you call mall operators and things like that. So their concern and the worry is, sir, even after, I mean, rather Kejriwal, I mean, the Chief Minister, Delhi, etc., even once they announce, how do we sustain for the next 2 quarters? Will we be able to kind of open our malls and stalls, etc.? Will we be able to kind of sustain? If this reality is not, of course, we are talking on from a what do you call infrastructure and otherwise this, but then the entire enterprise base, this is the reality. Because see, the word infrastructure is only a kind of physical instrument, physical base to drive services, enterprises. Unless that is addressed, this physical infrastructure or a mere, what do you call, a stock, is a way, I mean, is something in your warehouse, unconsumed, unutilized stock. On the other hand, the negative economies work on that. The maintenance of the stock, warehousing that stock, spoilage of that stock, removal of that stock, redressal of that stock. This is what exactly the infrastructure game today is. So I'm very happy that the minister, again, while we were making some of these presentations, they are also exactly on the similar kind of aspect. Then another important point is the piecemeal approach. Because I am now talking about wherever we are creating additional capacities, additional infrastructure. Because the piecemeal up, I mean, in fact, if we look at, analyze or dissect a DMIC corridor or the dedicated, I mean, rather freight corridor, DFCCIL, or the other corridors, whichever, most of those, I am talking about this mega project parts, etc. So the story so far was a piecemeal approach. I mean, you have highway, I mean, in fact, if you have to kind of make an economy work of that particular domain, you need a holistic approach. You have done your part of the highway, or he has done his part of what is called rail linkage. He has done another part of his metro component. What is the fun? What to do? What to do? What? Ultimately, that fellow doesn't have the kind of doesn't have the supply base to lift, or that coal linkage, whatever. See, this holistic linkage So far, in fact, that is where we have to kind of draw major lessons on the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. Of course, these will take time and things like that. But then, unless you operate and present it as an international case study of success, how will you justify as a nation? How do we justify to that investor, or to that JICA, or to the W World Bank? This is where, as a nation, as a country, that in several success stories, I must share with you, the country has not succeeded. And then whatever may be the efforts, whatever may be the kind of private equity or the other, I mean, institutional investors, one good thing is looking at the consumer base of the country, looking at the great capacity that it has got to absorb, that is what exactly is the kind of your base is still intact. Certain parameters, whether today your Sensex is intact or your institutional investor is still kind of enjoying that level of confidence. Of course, the rest of the parameters of the country are well intact. But then, unless we deliver, today's that institutional investor who is carrying a positive passport for you, ambassador for you, the same guy will turn as a kind of, I mean, what am I doing and why am I kind of investing this time? So this is where we need to kind of devise, I think, far more aggressive strategies in terms of particularly wherever we have been looking at whether the green field or the brown field. In fact, even in respect of, several projects announced in the minerals and mining base, or even some of those cluster base, certain, I mean, components that we were presenting to the government, I thought I would reflect here. Another important component is the international logistics base, because we have seen, of course, despite of the efforts that the government of India has put in, particularly by creating an exclusive logistics department in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, bringing all, I mean, looking at rather taking an integrated approach from various ministries handling the, various components of this logistics space, including that of these other supply base of whether it's the food processing or the coal ministry or the steel ministry, or apart from these normal, what you call major infrastructure centric ministries, whether it is the railways or the civil aviation or the waterways, etc. Still, the international trade logistics, that is where we need to, as a country, we need to really look at far more inwardly. Because with the new changes coming in place, particularly whether it's IA or the entire, digital game, the international trade operation part, because so far what happened was in the country, more inward looking aspect of the infrastructure we had created. As Mr. Kapila rightly mentioned, so how long you survive as an assembler? How long you become, I mean, you keep operating, everything comes and then you are merely remaining at SKD or CKD, and then rest is, your game is over. I mean, despite of the fact that we may be a major IT player supporting major parts of the world, but the reality is, because you see the thing is that right in the beginning, the hardware component, that is where we have perhaps, whether it is a policy mess up or whatever, that is where we had. And today to get some of those companies, in fact, a couple of months ago, we were working, just, how can we look at some of these, at least the focused companies from Taiwan, which are focusing on this, what you call this, the mobile manufacturers and few other companies. How do we strategize to get them into the country? And the fact is that despite of this entire policy and the trust that we have in the IT and IT enabled services, including that of communications, most of our base is not kind of built in those lines. So how do we kind of really look at, how do we garner those components is also another important element. So I think why I'm just bringing all these elements into this is, we also need to focus today, because you see, it might sound a little absurd to mention that while the domestic situation itself is reeling under such a, I mean, a crumbling kind of a phase, how is really kind of one focusing or looking at this international trade component? But then the reality is that given the, I mean, geopolitical developments taking place, what is today also equally important for us is to kind of seriously look at the international trade, particularly the export trade, and thereby creating export infrastructure. International trade infrastructure is also one of the important components. So these are certain, I mean, aspects perhaps the country needs to kind of focus on, while carefully kind of calibrating and hand holding the infrastructure players and the operators in the country. At the same time, you know, the all-round supply base and then other service industry connected to this, connected to the infrastructure, I think we need to kind of look at some of these aspects, which I thought I would present on this platform.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. Now coming back to Kapila. See, this one thing is all the problem. We are all aware because on and off so many things keep coming. Problem is something which is anyway over highlighted. We need to give some solutions. One of the thoughts which I would like Mr. Kapila to elaborate is, see, government is having limited funds, as all of us know, but it has got funds, some funds. One of the thought is that there is something called Narega, in which they are supposed to give almost 1.5 lakh crores to people. Why doesn't the infrastructure industry tell the government that why don't you give it on specific highways, specific roadways, specific waterways? Then it becomes an asset. Today, anybody digging a small well goes and tells the government that I did so much, this is what I did, he gets 3,000 rupees per month. But suppose if we synergize and tell somebody like Mr. Kapila that you plan, I am giving you 500 crores between Delhi to this place, I want so and so. You have so many workers, each worker will get 3,000 rupees from Narega, and that becomes an asset. And once anything to do with this type of assets are created, the multiplication effect in terms of valuation is more than 10 times. That means the same 200 crore or 500 crore will become 10 times that money in terms of the valuation, which is where the secured governance also comes in picture. So that way, if we can advise the government, because like what comfort level Dr. Reddy brought is, yes, these are all known to the ministers and they are trying to address it. But suppose this type of solution is given, that whatever little money you have, how can people like us tell them how to multiply that? I would like Mr. Kapila to give his reaction and see in what way, whether such ideas, if we can give, how we can take it forward. And people like Mahesh Reddy is always there to take it to the government. Mr. Kapila.
Dr. Shekhar, I fully agree with you. I'll just take very, very quickly and briefly I'll mention about the infrastructure part. One of the serious problems which we saw at the work sites at the time of COVID-19, when the lockdown came up, was the migrant labor which was worst affected. Now, in such a scenario, what we need to do is that these funding should have come handy to provide at site where the people were certain amount so that they need not have left those places. There was not adequate provision in our contracts which would give comfort to the contractor or the concessionaire or the industrialist and the industries that if he looks after this labor, he will have some compensation from funding of this kind which is available. So if this had been announced at that time by the government, that under this funding we have this money and we will be happy to assist you in this COVID scenario, please look after these people. Now what we have done is, uh, during the last couple of months, the Niti Aayog has undergone standardization of the documentation for the award of works under various categories, under EPC, under BOT. And in those, we have provided under the force majeure clause a provision that will ensure that people don't have to go back the way they went back this time. The government has announced that they would like to build accommodation for the migrant labor. And I had, in fact, from Consulting Engineers Association of India, we had written to the Honorable Prime Minister that these should be provided in the areas where the factories are. Actually, in the factory layout plans, when they were approved for the industrial development, in those industrial development plots, there were areas specified for building the construction for the migrant labor, for the labor. But those unfortunately were misused. They were not used for the labor. They were used for building multi-story buildings or the residences for the directors. So that should have been avoided. And in fact, we should try to give accommodation to the migrant labor to the labor in the factories itself, so that they don't have to travel any far off distance. They are very much there. And in that campus itself, some school can be made to run so that their children can be educated, and they don't, such a calamity takes place, they don't want to run back because they have a house to stay, they have their kids there, they are looked after by such fundings. This is how I think we can utilize these funds more appropriately and probably help the nation at large.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Shekhar, just to
yes,
supplement what Dr. Kapilaji has mentioned, primarily, I mean, I do not know what is actually on the ground situation as to what is happening. The cess collected for this construction workers funds, etc., which was there with the Ministry of Labor. Rather, subsequent to this migration of the laborers, particularly the construction laborers from various states to their natives, etc., native places, etc. What would have been most ideal would have been kind of effectively utilize those funds and what to create what just Dr. Kapila has mentioned. In fact, just a few weeks before, this migration was taking place, some representations have gone to the Honorable Labour Minister and also quite few chief ministers as well. But in the meantime, I mean, since this, whatever, most unfortunately, our systems, ultimately the truth is there, whatever the systems we have in place, none of those things could play out, could work. And then see the subsequent to their migration, one can really see what was the kind of, political dynamics, and not only the political implications and the ramifications are not only on the infrastructure and the construction sector, but the overall country's fabric as such. So, Kapilaji, with strong advice that you had already mentioned, some representation is already gone, but somewhere this particular nuance of taking care of the kind of worker community, particularly keeping an eye on the stability that the works will not suffer, thereby the economy will not suffer. I think this needs to come in place, but certainly we will work together. Yeah, we will work together. So that is where I think certain things have gone little wrong on the policy side.
Thank you. So since we are there will be a lot of things to talk, we'll maybe have one more session. Today we will try to close it, saying that infrastructure is very important. It is a question of slight policy tuning. All of us appreciate that there is a shortage of money, but at the same time there's a huge international funds available for which there is a change. There's a change in the mindset. There's no need of any change in the policies. There is change in the mindset of the thing. Policies are reasonably fine because otherwise nothing would have come. If X can come, X plus 100 times X also can come because so much money has come. But there is 100 times this money waiting outside to come because there is no other place where people can invest. All other countries are either not capable of absorbing or they don't have the capacity to use it. We have got the manpower, we got the skill, we got the people who can do, we got the sincerity, but there is something wrong with the certain mindset by which we only try to find some fault and keep things away, which is not just like whatever little I told. If suppose Narega funds can be used for infrastructure for labor, migrant labor, nothing would have gone wrong. Today, again, most of the people have again started coming back, even though it is not too late because people all went thinking that something will happen, but there they were expected to bring money, not come and eat at home. So they were all thrown out by their own families. So most of the people have come back. Many other people are coming back. So here at least it's not too late for us to make a representation through Dr. Reddy and give it to the government that yes, you got funds in X. It's the question of allotting that funds to Y and take care, and that itself gives you, money for somebody to get the daily bread and butter, and then expand. So with that, maybe I'll close today's thing. There is a lot more to tell, but since time is up, I will ask Akram to formally close the session. Akram.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shekhar. Wonderful, actually. And I really want to thank Kapila sir and Mahesh sir for the wonderful insights about the sector, about the industry. I think I don't need to add anything because it doesn't make sense if I add something that is said by real experts working on the ground. Two, three things. As PPP, the private public partnership, has done a tremendous, has brought the huge potential and can, I think, meet a lot of challenges that we have in the infrastructure sector. We have to massively explore and leverage that for the country. A lot of success models are in front of us, whether it is Delhi Metro or the Gujarat Solar Innovative Project. That these are success stories that the other sectors, especially the road, highways, railway, need to learn how Metro has done it wonderfully well. I think one more suggestion that I have when I work with industry associations like FICCI and CII, the biggest thing we did one of the BRICS infrastructure summit, and we realized that we need to have, if we can have a separate dedicated body, but if we can attract these sovereign funds, there are billions and trillions of sovereign funds who are so willing to come to India. They don't see anything. They just want to put money in India. They have done their study. They are totally ready with their money. What we just need to have a dedicated body and a guarantee of securing the risk with the sovereign fund. And we have the money. And they are more than ready to give us more than actually how much we are willing to take the money from them. So we just, I think, need to explore that. With this, I want to end. And to all our viewers, if you're watching, if you like this kind of discussion, do subscribe and view us, because this Policy Times is dedicated to promote developmental journalism. And through our activity, we would be promoting this kind of discussion more so that we really achieve on-ground development in the country. Our mission is, in our lifetime, we want to see India a truly developed nation in all perspectives. And that is where and how Policy Times is totally dedicated at. Thank you. Keep watching the Policy Times.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shekhar. That was a wonderful initiative. Certainly, we